a lot of things in terms of theater, coaching soccer. Moving forward, I've been in Howard County High School system for now 16 years. So my focus, working with Black males, working with Black students, working with Black youth, but ultimately working with youth as a whole has just been important for my received and how it's influential with everything that I've been able to be a part of. So that's being able to work with the men that I work with, being able to work with having the access that I have access to just helps to build everything we're looking forward to strengthen. But also, I'm able to see everything that I've experienced and everything that I went through. And now I'm trying to broaden everything that we can expand on because you're looking at how times change, but also how times change, which also means some factors change. So I want to be a part of the factors and I want to be a part of changing lives. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marcus Sanko for Nix. It's an honor to be breathing and to be living. And it's a blessing to be here. I am a Howard County resident, Howard County native. I have been in the Howard County public school system, worked with the Black Student Achievement Program as a liaison, the SAP, as many affectionately refer to it as, for 12 years. Once I left being in public school sector for 12 years, I spent time as a curator for a local museum of African American culture and history. And then from there, I transitioned on and I'm currently the assistant director for the Silas Craft Allegiance program. Delighted to have one of my beloved students here, part of the conversation today. So I'm a professor there and I oversee that program with my colleagues. In addition to that, I have a business that I operate called History Hills Consulting, using history as a vehicle in the community to support and empower businesses, organizations, and groups to incorporate healing methods and practices to foster optimum wellness, to improve mental health and different outcomes. Over the course of my tenure, I've worked with countless youth and people of all ages. But Black men and Black males have been the core of what a lot of my attention has been aimed at. I also show up in this space as a husband. I show up in this space as a father. I show up in this space as a son. Just last week, I unfortunately had to experience and bear witness to another young man that I put a lot of time and energy to supporting, working with his family in middle school, Patuxent Valley Middle School. I attended the celebration of life for him. He tragically lost his life because of violence, and he is not the only student or the only Black male that I have worked with throughout the years who I've had to see transition. However, amidst all of that, I still have hope because for all those tragedies and sad circumstances, I'm fortunate to have seen many blossom and develop and do wonderful things. But it's also important to work as a collective, and so I'm excited to be a part of this discussion. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Dr. Cross for pulling this together. Certainly, I'm Willie Flowers. I'm a father and a father and a husband here, but also president of the NAACP. I want to acknowledge the work of Duncan, because he's been on the front line of this work concerned about Black boys since before I knew who he was. I heard about his work in Kala, who's heading the Prince Hall Masons in this area. And they both are, I'm trying to help both of them to build their stuff because they have looked at the problems that we have and are ready to work. So I just want to say that in my presentation that what I plan to do is support anybody trying to break this cycle that we see that can easily escalate and without response. So these two people I have seen be prepared to do work to mitigate that, and I want to help them in whatever way possible.
Good afternoon, Kevin Slayton. Dr. Cross, thank you for the invitation. I'm a Baltimore City resident. I pastor a church, a Methodist church in Baltimore City. adjunct professor at Lancaster Theological Seminary, and otherwise I also work at the Maryland Center on Economic Policy, focused on fiscal and tax policy and how it ultimately impacts lives. People who look like me. I'm excited to be here just because I think we're moving into a place where it's getting harder and harder to have conversations and be intentional about your target, especially when the target is black men. Because black men are often the target, never in this way. So I pray and I look forward to the outcome of these conversations. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Well, my name is Jonathan McKinney. Ran into Dr. Cross and at a restaurant. And who knew that we would end up in this space? And I'm honored to be with so many amazing folks, people that I know in the room, people that I'm eager to meet. I often consider myself a poor kid from the east side of Detroit. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so I grew up not understanding that I was surviving like every attack of systemic racism on young black men until I became an adult. And as a young adult, I started doing the work to fight against those things. Moved down here to Columbia, Maryland in 2016 as the regional director for the NAACP, and left in 2020. And since then, just been finally outside in this community because my work took me all over the country. And now for me to be able to focus that work here in the community has opened the door for me to meet a lot of amazing people like this. So I'm looking forward to the work that we're going to be able to do.
Thank you. And thanks for all the guests, appreciate it, that are here. So we're not going to spend more time talking about, but we're going to get straight into the conversation today. But I just want to acknowledge everyone that have taken the time to be here because you all could have been elsewhere. Being that we have only one student here, as I told your dad, because one of the things that I do, I give suits to black male students. So after we finish here, I need to get to your size, so you'll be getting in a free suit that you can wear. And you can tell me whatever color you have. I have.
I'm
Well, I never stopped learning. I got to see the current transfer. But that's something that I've been doing for years. Even while I was teaching at the university, I give away at least 2 or 3 suits every week to black male students. And I had over time, I had people start donating and giving me suits to give to students that have seen the work. Even a company, I have their corporate card. I can call them and they give me suits for pretty reasonable price. Because they see the work, I brought them on campus too, as well. The students feel it. So we're going to get straight into the questions. Anyone can answer the questions. So I'm not going to point the questions to anyone specifically. But what I may do though, if you give me a response, I may have a follow-up response. Or if one of the panelists want to ask, or just continue on. So the first question that I will be asking today is, when you look at the current statistics affecting black men in education, incarceration, health, economics, what concerns you most and why?
I can start. There is a reason, in my opinion, why the term Black Lives Matter became a thing. It's because historically we were not taught to listen to each other. We were taught, especially as men, we have to be tough. We have to take it on the chin. Big boys don't cry. You know what I mean? And so in all of that, we are not taught to listen to each other. We're not taught to support each other in our community historically. And with the current climate that we're in, I think that we're moving to a point of discomfort where we're starting to open the door to have more conversations like this. So we can see that there are other brothers in the room that's gone through pain, that suffered through some things, and that can talk from a perspective of experience instead of things that they heard. And I think that is, in my opinion, that is the silver lining around the cloud of where we are, is we're moving to a place where this is more common than not, right?
Can I piggyback on that a little bit? Because that statement was very valid. But when you have these statistics already that are already developed, there's already a preconceived notion. I'm looking at it from an educational standpoint. When we're looking at rearing our younger children, there's already a preconceived notion, an educational standpoint, not from a black male perspective, but from a community perspective of all other races, that child already does not have an opportunity or a chance to either learn based upon the four things of, already trauma, already incarceration, those things. Like, it's already preconceived that, you know what, as a black male, you are going to be in the legal system. As a black male, you potentially might not graduate over another race. So there's already a preconceived notion at a young age that is spilled over to others other than Afro Americans that are now, you're based upon going into like different things like prison pipeline. Those things, you're already at a number based upon the data that's already presented at such a young age.
I'll just add that I think that when we take that angle, we forget about the resilience of our people. And I want to remind everybody here that we can survive much worse. And we don't reinforce that. Everything about our survival after we left the continent has been about resilience. It's been about overcoming. It's about over adapting. And the enemy knows that. And the enemy has, at every level, tried to put things in front of us to stop what I call empire building, and which is our real purpose for being here, to figure out how we contribute to the establishment of what is next. And so when we get into looking at the devastating statistics, all those statistics are created, the negative side of them are created by systems that were set out to do what they do. And we got to be reminded of that. And what we have to do consistently is to overcome it by our unity as a people and using the strength that we have in us to win, to expect the best that's coming.
And I really appreciate that perspective to remind us of our resilience.
No, I think it's important to emphasize resilience. I think for me, I think that it's not simple. It's not simple, and I think sometimes we take things that are simple and we stay there, but things are complicated. So, for example, what I would ask is, well, what data? What data are we talking about? Who's telling the story, or now that data has been used on our community to weaponize. It's been used, and it's been used. Funding goes into how data reports are, how you distort the data, or skew the data, or exaggerate it. That's the reality, and it is important to be able to interrogate and look at how accurate it is from whose lens and who's telling the story. But context oftentimes is not in the equation. So, for example, working in BSAP, Black Student Achievement Program, one of the gripes and issues that I had was that, Black students and how they did academically, emotionally, socially was all based on the white standard. The standard was in whiteness. The standard was in white students. And so there's this gap where how can we try to catch up and have them measure up to them? So we have to define the data for ourselves and what that really means for us. The other thing is, even culturally, we know that numbers may say something, but Davon has a story. Shania has a story. What is their story? What is their family like? What is their mental health like? Where are they from? They got food to eat? What's the transport? So holistically, the data sometimes can be very narrow anyway, and oftentimes doesn't give a full, complete context of the story. And so the problem is, I also feel is that when we bring up these reports and when we're telling data, it's so narrow. There's not even an interest to hear about the qualitative or the story. It's about the numbers. So then it becomes, so how do I, so then it is, how do I tell the story and provide the numbers and the data, show the measures of the improvement and the growth, but yet provide the space to also leave room for the story, to leave room for the context, to leave room for all of that. And then the last point that I'll make is, as Brother Willie already alluded to before with the resilience piece, I think it is important to also talk about how we can look at the data from a strength-based approach. It's obviously we know that there's a problem, there's an issue, especially with our Black males. That's why we're here to talk. Yes. However, when we look at all aspects of our Black males or all aspects of our community, oftentimes it's easy to point to the negatives and the deficits. It's easy to point to what has happened, but how have we overcome? So we got to tease that out and kind of make it more expansive and bring in more complexity and nuance to how we even define what the data is.
Well, yeah, who's reporting the statistics? Because I know there's, I think Dr. Tolson, he talks, I think he probably should go by statistics. Because a lot of times the statistics that we see, they're not coming from us. And as Mr. Flowers said, we have to also look at the positive parts because they need to see that part of our experience so they can have a different perspective of who we are. If no one else is going to go into, take a step at the first question, I'm going to go into the next question. But Brother Colin, although you're not on the panel, I know we spoke about this the first time we spoke about some of the things that we need to do. So I'm going to still bring in some of the audience in the conversation and stuff like that. So, but my next question.
We're doing this with the purpose of mobilizing when we leave here, because this is just day one, I guess.
Yeah, this is.
Interest is what we do when we come here.
Yeah, this is going to be continuous. And, for me, to be honest with you, I always wanted to have a space that I can bring people. Now I finally do, so I have no excuse to bring us together and stuff like that.
Well, if I could, before you jump into the next question, and even piggybacking on the resiliency that we have, the health of a Black man or the health of a Black boy, when we look at the data, as you bring it up, of where we are academically, I don't believe we look enough at where we are health-wise in terms of making sure that child's mind is being put into a position where it can actually grow and where it's being able to be expanded and where it becomes a young man who has a mind that can actually grow, that can see himself outside of his surroundings, outside of his current situation, no matter what the situation may be, which speaks back to resiliency, because when we want to be resilient, we want to make sure we can still reach out to our community, we can reach out to those above us, we can reach out to those in hand with us. From experience, as a father, as a husband, as a student, as a growing male, we don't speak up, we don't reach out. So from an internal aspect of being able to go ahead and look outside of yourself and say, these are the things that I know that I need, these are the things that I know that I'm not getting, and then to look at it from an external point and say, these are the things that I see that are not being provided, these are the things that I know that I see that are not getting to that void, to that point, to that group. So I do echo again with Coach Duncan, but speaking back on, we want to be resilient, and we are resilient. We have a history of being resilient. I think we sometimes miss how to be simply resilient together because we don't work together enough.
Well, I take exception to that. We do work together. Every system we have that, you can see it, Coach Duncan, everybody here has done something in a system that allows for people to, sports is one of those things. Sports is the best example because the rules are the same. So there are systems where we do it, our focus needs to extend on that. We have been working years around technology and trying to figure it out, how to build a pipeline that looks like youth sports in technology. So in addition to getting it's only 1% of the people who play sports that go to professional sports, but you have suitable, prepared coaches. So we do work together. And I want to back up because when we talk about these statistics in a broad sense, we're not emphasizing the horror of what we talk about with the prison industrial complex. You mentioned education, and any time we talk about this, I want to reinforce we need to talk about solutions. So we talk about this prison thing and the system that created that. Laws are only made these days to put black men in prison. I don't want anybody to forget that. So you shouldn't be surprised that there's more black men in prison than anybody else. Same thing with education. Every piece of education is based on how to, um, um, I guess, incarcerate discipline. From the beginning, we've all been examples of that. And that can make you go crazy. So my point is, if we put the system that we have in place to bring up young people in sports into everything else, because even the energy on sports doesn't happen during the daytime, doesn't coach. People are spending their time after work and on the weekends to make plays. And that's all I want to reinforce. We have it, we not have the right focus. And that's what I share about that. And I guess we go to the.
Well, and the next question, you have touched on it a little bit because the next question is about the statistics. Tell part of the story from your lived experience, not just from the knowledge you gain, but from lived experience. What do the numbers fail to capture? And I know we spoke a little bit about resilience. Capture about black men in our community, in your community. What the statistic failed to capture, and it could be about you personally. Um, what the community needs to know about us as black men and what we're doing that's good that they haven't captured. So that information, that story, that message can go to especially the younger generation, and even to change the narrative.
So I think that Brother Marcus talked about it when he was speaking. When I was growing up, it was well known that if you failed the third grade, it was pretty much a prison cell that was built for you. And appreciate it. And I have three brothers that all failed the third grade. Like I grew up in the system and I watched it, I witnessed it, and we fought against it, right? And those types of statistics that directly affect. They built a prison in my neighborhood, like not in my city, in my neighborhood that we can walk to, specifically for us, kids that were in Detroit that they deemed as statistically uh, not on the level of being able to make it out of the community. And even at a young age, it's weird because I was about 15 or 16 when I started seeing it. And we fought against it. Like, and although my brothers did fail the third grade, um, none of my brothers have ever been to prison. All my brothers went to college, right? And I think when you going back to resilience and going back to standing up for each other, going back to having men that pour into young boys, because all my brothers played football. We had coaches, we had pastors and deacons and friends who gave us clothes, right? Like, I believe that the system is I'm sorry, tell me that.
Oh,
Not Mark.
Oh, Brian.
Brian, like Brother Brian said, the resilience is there, right? Like we've been doing it. We have the systems in place, but like Willie said, we have to figure out how to come together and continue to tell the right stories because there's far too many of us who made it, right? There's far too many of us who did not become a statistic. I was supposed to be one of those people. I can't. I've been shot at multiple times. I've had friends that died in the street. I grew up in Detroit in the 90s in the crack area, right? There's no way I'm supposed to make it. And so I can tell you a bunch of stories about being a statistic that survived what I wasn't supposed to survive. So, but I think that, going back to the resilience piece, going back to telling the right stories, because what we do is we put people in these categories according to numbers, not understanding. They came up with this term about 10 years ago in organizing. They called it relational organizing. And when they brought it in, I was like, that's what organizing has always been. It's relational, right? But they've been so focused on numbers that they forgot about the people. They forgot about we all have different stories. And I don't care if you're 6'1", bald head, you come from Detroit, East Side, you're still not me, and your story is very different. And so I think it's telling those stories is how we get the next generation to understand that they're not the only ones going through, because that's the problem. So many young people think that they're the only ones going through what they're experiencing, and for them to know that they're not alone and that they can have whether it's mentorship or just somebody to talk to, it goes a long way.
Yes.
So to answer your question directly, I think a large portion is letting our young men tell us, let them communicate. Now the thing is resilience, right? That's what we put on the team. Here's what I have observed from my experience. And I know my experience is not everybody's experience. What I've come to realize is, see, resilience can be a double-edged sword. On one side of the coin, resilience lets us know what our possibilities are. It lets us know the grit we have, how we can overcome, how we can work through stuff, all of that. The other side of it, though, is sometimes we're too resilient. We're resilient to a fault, to the point where, oh, I'm strong, I'm Superman, I don't have to ask for help. I don't have to trust nobody. I'm a move solo, I'm a move by myself, I'm good. So I think we have to really look at that for what it can be and what is serving us, what is healthy versus what is problematic. I would also go on to say, and maybe there's some in the room who might agree, maybe not. I think that I think about love language, right? So there's a book, there's a thing. What are the love languages? I don't know, was it 4 or 5 of them? But I'll reframe that. What's the pain language? Our young men can be able, and this is something that I noticed, school system or just working in the community, people who work with young folk. What are the signs? What are the red flags? How can I tell that something's going on? Do they look disheveled? Truancy, abandonment, avoidance, or outbursts? What are the symptoms? And so I think a lot of that comes from listening. Now, here's the thing that, and I'm gonna get personal, right? Because we in many different facets, we support our young men, but we also are men ourselves. So for me personally, it's almost like, so they say, men, we have to be more in tune with our emotions, or we can't be emotional. You got to be tough. You got to be macho. All of that. And then when you try to tap into emotions, feelings, all that kinds of stuff, right? Then it can get turned against you, and that happens too many times. Dang if you do, dang if you don't. So when we talk about listening to our men, for them to give us the answers to what they need, what I'm getting at is we got to create a space and an environment conducive for them to want to come to us, for them to want to trust us, them to want to be able to open up and disclose. And I think that is huge, especially with trust. And I will also say, lastly, that when we talk about working together, I think that, of course, there's always things we can do to work more together. There's always that. But I think also, even within our organizations or within our families, it's work to keep them together. So I would say there's layers of what we have to do. But I think definitely there's always things that can be done to work together.
I would be remiss if I let somebody run out here and reframe resilience. So let me give you an example of what resiliency looks like. And I'll point specifically at African American families of African descent that come here from other countries. And you can look at it happening specifically right now. And it happened when our brothers and sisters came up in the Great Migration from the South. And I'm sure somebody's studying the malaise that's happening now, because I think the malaise has happened that created all these broken systems. But if you look at African families specifically, and I talk about Nigerians in Prince George's County, who were taking things, and Ethiopians in this region, because this region of the United States has more Ethiopians in it than anywhere outside of Ethiopia. And what they have done is tremendous. Same thing with Nigerians. They've gotten into businesses because they couldn't get jobs. They couldn't get jobs in some cases because they can't, something as simple, they can't speak the language. But they come here dedicated to trying to figure out how to build a business. If you build a business, the child is going to med school. They feel like they failed if they don't go to med school. But if they don't go to medical school, they go to law school. And I don't know how you feel like a failure going to law school, but it's a fact. And so I'm looking at this lawyer right there. But some Nigerian families, they feel like they failed and they don't go to law school. They don't graduate from. So that's resiliency to me, and those are communities. And I want to add that right now in Prince George's County, I think the Nigerian community has more people, if not running, getting elected to public office than any other nationality, period. Because I don't know how to explain it, but I think somebody needs to study it. But they're making a hard play. So that's resiliency from a systemic standpoint. Because when you get involved, politics is a systematic way of determining who gets what, when, and how. And the real gutter part of politics, for those who know it, you establish yourself by rewarding your friends and punishing the hell out of your enemies. Sorry for getting into that spirit, but my point is that groups, I won't say specifically, but they are an example right now of figuring out how to change the system. So if they are having meetings after the meeting and saying we're going to change this, that's the type of resilience that supersedes some individual notion that one person who is accomplishing something looks like it's a bad thing.
And I want to interject something real quick. I want to say that we talk about statistics. We're talking about the statistics of the black men. All right. And I think where we're getting our data, or what we're getting data on, might be a little messed up, right? Because the problem, the thing that's problematic is these systems, right? And you have to collect data on the system and figure out how a human being can deal with that system, right? And how a human being can work through that system. It's not a matter of the black person's doing this and 1 out of 5 and 5 out of 10 dentists use this brand. It's just like, let's look at that system and let's study it, because the real problem is that white supremacy. That's the disease. That's the pandemic. That's all of it, right? And you have to find ways to eradicate that within your basic community and then move out further. That's just what
This gives me a great opportunity to chime in since he's talking about white supremacy. So I think a large part of it, the data and statistics that we look for now are often conceived and created in such a way now that they give you what they're looking for. So the statistics speak to and feed into a system that says in a nonprofit driven community, we want to fund programs where little black and brown babies are suffering from this and that. So give me data and information that speaks to that.
Yeah.
And that's what we tend to do. We follow that paradigm. But to the resilient piece, because I do sort of often engage, I never walk away from text. I remind people, particularly this time of year, Exodus 5, you know the story as Moses and Aaron going before Pharaoh. You know it this way. Go tell Pharaoh, let my people go. The issue is his people have been working and not being treated fairly because they wanted time off, right? So the king gets pissed and says, I dare them come to me and say they deserve equity. What I'm going to do is I'm going to demand that they work harder. And he says they'll have to give them their own straw. Most of the time when you hear this spoken out of context, it says they took our straw. They've never been able to take our straw. Black folk have always been able to make straw wherever the hell we were. And the problem is we've become too dependent on people based on statistics and numbers that tell them what we need. And that begins to drive us in ways that we have been neutered.
And to that point, and I don't want to go, but I'm going to give you the opportunity because that's where our creativity that's not captured. That's where our leadership is not captured. That's where our brilliance is not captured because they can't take that because we always have that. And that's what you just alluded to. And so that's what we need to make sure is out there more. So we have to take the lead. I strongly believe we have to take the lead regardless of what's going on. Our creativity needs to be seen. Our brilliance needs to be seen. Our leadership needs to be seen. Now we know we have good leadership here. I just got here and I come across black men who are doing the work. But not everybody knows. And we can't wait for them to make our story known. That story is our responsibility. They can catch up when we are leading our story, our brilliance, our creativity. And once we take charge,
Let's make our own straw. I typically for the young, I see a couple young people.
What you talking about? Straw.
So that's what that scripture is referring to, is that you have to use the straw in order to make the bricks. We've always been able to make bricks without straw. Is sort of what I'm referring to. And so the data that is not captured that you'll never get is intentional. But we've had, and the reason I'm throwing out the young people in the room is you've had a front row seat to this over the last 16 weeks in ways we've never seen it before. And I hope somebody does a thesis or a dissertation on it. You watched a young man navigate a major system that told him he was not who he knew he was. And they tried everything possible to get him to buy into the narrative that he wasn't, based on statistics. You want this, you want that. But what they've never spoken to through all these 16 or 17 weeks is the influence and the impact of having a daddy. His daddy prepared him in ways no university, no other system could prepare him to stand before an entire world and a system that wanted to see his demise. No matter what they came up with statistically every week, it was not enough to change the influence of his father. I say that because, again, I'm going to take you back to the Bible. I'm probably going to say it afterwards.
Tell everybody what you're talking about.
Oh, I hope you know who I'm talking about.
I think they know.
Should know or saying it.
It took me a second.
I assume you know who this is.
Okay.
Yes, he is.
See, everybody know.
There are players within the last 72 hours that have fallen apart under the pressure. This young man has not, they haven't been able to break him. That's the influence of a father. And so this is what I say. Matthew chapter 2, the book that I deal with is, the Christian Bible. But the story that introduces the young man to us begins this way. And I want you to really capture this. It begins by a young woman who conceives, and the father is told, in order to protect his future, I need you to take him and hide him in Egypt. Now, I can no more separate Egypt from Africa than I can Baltimore from Maryland. So whenever I read that text, I say take and hide him where? In Africa. Why? Because the same king in that text that I read has decided, because he can't stop this boy's potential, he will destroy by creating policy to kill every boy within a certain region that looks like him. I'm arguing that since the birth of this nation, since man has ever walked, something about the cosmos has tried to destroy the power that is in the black man. The only thing that saves this boy is that this man listens to God and takes the boy to Africa. Most folks, and me too, I'm guilty. I've always under that story said, I'm so glad Joseph took and hid him in Africa. And most folks would say, well, that's what Joseph's supposed to do. But let's be real about the context of the story. Joseph ain't his daddy. What am I trying to say? The future of black men and black boys is dependent on other black men who didn't necessarily give birth to them to go out of their way to protect them, because the world is trying to destroy them. They are brilliant. Everything they touch, it's gold. Nothing better on the planet than a black boy. And so it's men like this who come together in this room have to find ways to protect their brilliance, find creative ways to make sure that they get to where it is they got to go, because there's always something trying to take them out.
I just want to say, when we come together, I think that there's a lot of value and a lot of therapeutic outcomes from just being together. Black men being with black men. That in and of itself is a threat, and it's also therapeutic. It's soothing, having conversations, relating to each other, unloading, unpacking. But once again, I maintain when it comes to this resilience piece, Dr. Naeem Akbar, for example, African-centered psychologist, clinician, he said, just by us being here is a miracle. Because we have been through Jim Crow, slave trades, mass incarceration, medical stuff. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. But what I would also posit with that resilience is that we take care of ourselves along the way to continue to be resilient and to continue to be able to be about the long game. Because some of that data, though it can be weaponized, some of that data, though it might not come from us, some of the data can be distorted, and it's from systems we already know what time it is and what the agenda is. We got to look at some of that stuff at the same time, because diabetes, cancer, stroke, high blood pressure, what else? Prostate cancer, suicide. Like, we didn't even need data to tell us that stuff is real. Talk to the men in your family. Talk to, the brothers that are around. And so what I'm saying is, this stuff that we have been through, yes, we're very resilient, but don't think it ain't leaving its toll or it's not leaving its mark. And so we're talking about intergenerational trauma. We're talking about what my grandmother's grandmother went through, what my great-great-great-great-grandfather went through on a DNA level. So what I'm saying is, we're resilient, and we will continue to be. I have hope, and I have faith and belief that we will. But we also got to work in there times to restore, to heal. Why am I saying that? Because in this culture, in this Americanized culture, y'all know what it is. Time is money. It's a grind culture. I ain't got time to sleep. In fact, no, we need to sleep. Here's some data, and this is some data we can chew on. The research shows for us black people, we either oversleeping, it's called depression. It's called different mental health issues, or we're undersleeping. We ain't sleeping at all. We're not sleeping enough. So all I'm saying is, we also gotta just prioritize taking care of ourselves. That's all I'm saying.
And that's true. So we have to focus on the habits that we then practice daily. But I know you wanted to say something before I get to the next question, because I know kind of getting into the questions as we go forward. What are you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be here. I love what everybody's saying when you talk about the traps that are embodied in the urban culture in the 80s and 90s. There was so many that you had to avoid. When the Reverend talks about the stars and foundation, that's necessary to be strong as a black man, come up. When the brother here talks about the importance of politics around it, and when you talk about resilience and education, I feel like we have to create a platform that has that foundation, that creates a narrative that embodies all of these conversations, so that we have the vulnerability of black men, no matter where we're coming from what level, so that we all can get together as a community, unified, to help each other. Because you talk about how the Nigerians and the Ethiopians have worked together to establish this community. Have you been able to penetrate the Ethiopians and Nigerians into establishing that community, with the African Americans? So when I see what I'm getting at holistically is that unity that embodies us all, no matter where we come from, and the forgiveness and lack of judgment, so that we can have a community to forge our own narrative, our own statistics, so we can create the statistics that get us to where we want to go. Because we can look at history, but we can create history as well, based on the power that exists with the collective mind.
I'm sorry I couldn't flex that out. What I'm saying is that and I'm very proud of Southerners who came here, and I'm sure if there's a study on the first generation of Southerners who came here, you see the same type of excellence. I'm saying that there was something that slowed it down. I am also saying, and I'll piggyback on what he spoke about, because if anybody knows about the preachers here, knows about the story of Exodus, Pharaoh specifically said, kill the boy babies. And that hasn't changed. So every level of success, and you're going to see this with the Ethiopians, you're going to see it with the Nigerians because of their success. And what do you see right now? What is Trump doing? And I'll add the Latino, anybody from south of Texas as well, and their great migration. Who was the first people he went after? So it's not the system is the same. And they're coming after the boy babies because the frame was who is a criminal and who is in the prisons who might be Latino, might be Africans. Those are men. So if you take them out, nobody's saying anything. And that's all I'm saying, that we should be aware of the system. I also want to reinforce that at every level, our resiliency is there. What I want to stabilize is, we've got candidates running for public office right here, that if public officials make the mistake of taking white and Democratic or Republican agendas, they are failing all of us, because our agendas should be a part of a systemic way to push back on systems that are set up to break us. And if we don't put that on the forefront, we're going to continue to get what we can. So my message to the Nigerians and to the Ethiopians is, don't let the same thing happen.
But the power is in that collective voice.
Right. So with the collective voice, one of the things that we have to make sure we don't do, whether you're a politician, whether you're a commentator, whether you're an organizer, is we have to make sure that we don't sell out, right? Because that's what happens. And I grew up, like I said, in the crack era and the AIDS era, but I also grew up in the hip hop era, right? Up until the mid '90s, hip hop was untouched by mainstream media, right? It was us telling our stories. It wasn't what it is today. You need to go back and listen to BDP and listen to Eric B. and Rakim and listen to what we were talking about. X-Clan would not be able to be played on the radio today, but they were talking about black power in keeping the black dollar in the black community. Black power blew up, right? We had a culture here, right? And a lot like the third season of Martin, when Martin got that big paycheck, when Dave Chappelle walked away from that big paycheck, what happens is we start going after these political seats. We start wanting to get our organizations up and running, and we start taking money and we water down who and what we are. I've been in a nonprofit space for a long time, and I can tell you, going after grant money and going after funding, you end up watering down the reason why you started what you started. And so I think the hard part when you start talking about statistics, because you said something that made me think. Yeah, we talk about the statistics negatively. I can tell you right here in Howard County, you can talk about how many black boys and girls are arrested in schools versus the ones that are not. But we're not talking about those black boys and girls that are doing amazing things in the school. There are no statistics for that you can find on the state level, right? But we have to make sure, as we're recreating whatever resilience might be moving forward in the space, we have to make sure that we don't sell out who we are and what we are, because it happens far too often. But we have great ideas, we come together, and then we start fighting once money becomes involved. I've been a part of a lot of organizations, whether it's the church, whether it's social justice. As soon as money gets involved, we start falling apart. And so I think that's one of the things we have to take responsibility of as men and as a community as a whole.
Yes, and as you touch on that point, which includes trusting and because mistrust is one of the big major part of us not really working together. So my question is, next question: why do you believe progress has been slow in certain areas, based on something you just said? Why do you believe progress has been slow in certain areas despite years of awareness and conversation? Because we have been talking, we are aware, but as you alluded to, sometimes when we get there and when we think we get something, we change what we are about. And if we change what we're about, we may not make the same impact or have the same impact. Just like on the Panthers kind of party. So
Yeah, I don't believe there's a lack of progress. I think that getting back to what we're talking about, we only focus on the negative stuff. Okay, we got children going to college. We got children. I mean, I don't want to just focus on my experience, but the children that I've seen in this community that I have influence over have done some amazing things already. I don't think anybody's been arrested for anything that but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. That just means that these children are doing what is expected, so they don't get the attention. When 7 children are killed, 7 children are involved in murders, and there 7 of them are getting ready to stand trial, that takes precedent over all that. And so that's a concern for me, and that's another reason I'm here. And that needs to be fixed. But it needs to be fixed at looking at what we've done, that the ones that we don't talk about, what they may have done that allowed them to escape that. And that should be the emphasis. And I'm convinced, and if you've heard me say anything, that it's a community that invests in a damn Gucci dog park can't see the value of investing a mile away on the same campus. So the campus that I'm talking about, I use the word campus, but there's a dog park called Bark built on the grounds of Meriwether Post Pavilion, where they have some of the most significant shows in this region. And I think that would have been a better place for young people to do beats. Because we didn't do that, some of the kids who could have been doing beats got killed right here at the same mall, less than a mile away. So the emphasis and focus should be different. The assessment should be what children want to do, and invest in that. Are we going to get, like I said, the tragedies that we have? And I also add that in this community, I want to remind everybody, because they celebrate the village system, but the village system works for white folks. Because white folks are transactional. The term he used was relational. Black people are relational. We need all the stuff that comes from this community, but we just can't get it from one village. We need all of it. And so, because that's set up, we're cut out of some of the folks in need are cut out of the overall support that I think is there. And so, it's for us to break down the village stuff. That's something that we should be intentional about.
I appreciate it. Anybody else want to touch on that?
Just a couple of opinions. I'm kind of tying some things together, but within this room, we probably have the youngest, which is how old? 10. And I'll put myself on a pile. I'll be the oldest at 75. Okay. And then when I'm not, but I'm just going to put myself out there. I'm going to put myself, I'm going to direct myself to me. I'm going to bring that. I don't want to highlight anybody else but myself, okay?
I'm 74, man.
All right, so you might essentially be the oldest in here.
Maybe.
And I think what I've seen, or what I know, and what I've also experienced, that these generational curses that we have been passed down, they haven't been broken. And I know for a fact, within, we're going to go back to the Howard County school system. It is not highlighted enough for our young Black males who are achieving, going to schools on scholarships. I mean, full scholarships. It's not highlighted. Okay, for kids who are going to trades, who are excelling, even the ones who are graduating from Howard County schools, are not being highlighted enough. Because on the reverse end, I can totally say this, which honestly burns me every time, is that what is highlighted is the statistic of who is not graduating. And it goes back to Afro-Americans. And then that goes to Afro-American males. Okay, what is highlighted is how can we change I push to change systems based upon how the system should change the behavioral standards for Afro-American males or Afro-American children, because it's highlighted. I'm talking about actually highlighted as a school improvement goal that we need to decrease disciplinary situations for Afro-American kids. We need to increase graduation rates for African-American kids, and we need to increase attendance for African-Americans. Those are highlighted. Like, that is what's seen. It's not just on a bar graph. No, it's specifically saying we need to highlight this and we need to target this area. And when those negatives are highlighted and not the positive, how can we really encourage our kids? We're fighting against something that's different. We got to encourage and highlight who is going where, what is going on. For instance, we had a celebration, and based upon, I'm not going to go, but systematically with the whole equity piece, okay? They took something that's very special to highlight our Afro-American kids who are getting over a 3.0, all right, who are graduating, and they're highlighting and actually get to have their own special ceremony. So some of these things that are highlighted are negative, and we see that, we read that, we fight against that, and sometimes we feel like the fight is not there because systematic is not changing. And to push that point in terms of the system, we talked about Howard County. I come from DC Public Schools, to where I buried personally over 50 kids, okay? Over 50. And now I come to a county that is so resourceful that I have lived in, and I still have property, but it's so resourceful that we don't take the proactive measures to best help our kids. And within recent years, since I've been in the school system there, I've had 2 of my kids who've done the murdering at my school that have killed 3 of his kids. And that's 5. That's 5 young Black men that are gone based upon a systematic approach of not being proactive with our kids systematically. And that needs to change. And it comes from, I'm passionate about it because I've been working in the educational system. We have younger kids here that are 10. My nephews are 10. You know, we all have children here that we have to systematically fight against every day and be very intentional about what's going on in the schools, because that is the majority of your child's time.
And and I'm going to get to you, but to what you just said, being that we are fed the negative, we then believe it. So even though the positive is happening, no one is really seeing and push that positive. And the young people are not seeing that positive that needs to be highlighted, although it's happening. Where young men, as you say, those achievers, no one knows about those achievers.
I was just gonna say to what Brother Mark is saying, even in the education system, there's not a lot of us brothers anyway. So that right there is something to address in and of itself. Furthermore, we have to I believe it's imperative to continue to support the institutions that are already existing or build institutions to be able to be independent of the system so they're not compromised by the system that we speak to. Back in the day, during the civil rights movement, those who was down with NAACP or down with SNCC or certain groups, If they work jobs, and if they was terminated, there would be an economic safety net to support them if they were terminated. The problem is, we're in a situation in terms of dynamics in the culture. How far do we want to go? And I hear you. We can't sell out. We don't need to. I agree. But then it's like, well, at a certain point in time, I got a family to feed. I'm not making excuses. I'm just talking about the conversations. I got to go to work. I don't have time for the organizing. Now we have to make time, right? So I'm not giving nobody a pass. But these are some of the conversations. How can we be able to take care and provide for our basic necessities and build these independent institutions and build these independent structures so we ain't got to worry about that? Last thing, short little history. Back in the day, and Brother McKinney, we talked about this when we had the tour at the Harry Tubman Cultural Center. So back in the day, you had Black communities sprinkled all throughout Howard County, Guilford, Daisy, Bushy Park, what else? All throughout Howard County, Black communities, Black neighborhoods in Howard County. Here comes Columbia. Jim Rouse comes with his dream. Come on over here. Ain't got to worry about redlining no more. Equality, equitable living. That's cool, but what happened? The Black communities here in Howard County, Savage and Daisy and Alpha, they left their communities, the businesses, the churches, the schools. Even though the schools ain't go to the 4th to 5th grade, they left those enclaves and they came here. And when they came, and don't get me wrong, I live here, so don't get me wrong, I'm not, trying to be hypocritical, but what I'm saying is we have to define what is good for us. And I would even say, Brother Cross, I know you're saying, look, we're talking too much. We got to get busy. We got to get active. And I would say, well, yes, we got to continue to be about the work. But because in Howard County, people got a little change, people might be doing okay, we might have lost or forgotten where we've come from. What I'm saying is, let us not forget where we've come from. That I believe is very, very important. And I say that because of the point of what you said in terms of the resources that are here. Some of the individuals that are doing okay, different things like that here. Because we can easily say, oh, but we ain't in Florida, we ain't in Texas. This ain't Western Howard County. But no, we got to also continue to keep boots on the ground here and not get comfortable.
So I wanted to, you used the term earlier, and I want, because I'm trying to stay focused on solutions. So if y'all get tired of hearing me, I am trying to do that because I don't want to just say all this stuff and then leave and go on about our business. But it's a common term that we use as Black folks called generational curses. And that is accepted. And everybody knows, we know what that means. Because you got somebody in your family who jacked up all their lives and you feel like their children got it. But I think we should pivot to focusing on generational cures. And what that is simply to look like. And the example is what I shared earlier about our people in the Great Migration. They came here so they can do better than where they are. Same thing with the various immigrant communities. And we can do the same thing now. Because if you think there's a difference between what we're dealing with right now with young people being less than exceptional in school, being incarcerated, being whatever we think these curses are, that creates an atmosphere for the same energy and resilience of all people to get out of that situation.
Well, yes, and we're going to continue because we have 15 questions, right? And we only had 3. So we may not get to all 50 questions. We may not, because I just say we only had 3, and just the time we have already spent. So I'm going to see if I can get to at least 3 more questions. So the next question that I have to ask is: at what point does awareness become responsibility, and how do we move beyond simply talking about the data, as you just alluded to, focus on generational cures? So we have to be more solution oriented. because we know what to do, we know the experiences, right? So, from your perspective and from what you have seen, what do you think we need to do as we go forward, or what will you do going forward?
I can personally just say to me, what I would do moving forward for myself is to continue to do what my passion allows me to do, to try to build relationships, move culture, and to uplift our young Black men. Um, I know we have been designated a month, but I think of February of Black History Month. But I promote Black History Month daily. Okay, so when I go into a day to help change or to help move that question, I look internally within myself of how I can push that agenda to teach somebody else what the agenda is. I'll give an example, and I want to put this out to the room. It might not be for the YouTube, but on one day of February, I will get everybody's contact number here. We're talking about highlighting greatness because everybody's great here. I will be developing a career day at my school to highlight a day where Afro-American males, females, entrepreneurs will come in and we will be highlighted. And I want you to talk to my kids, and we'll be in we call it a career cafe. And it will highlight what we do. And that's like a small, impactful thing that close to 40 or 50% of my children can see how others are working within this community. So when I look at myself, my passion has to kind of roar like everybody on this table and take from, and to be able to continue to move forward and push the agenda of what we're talking about today. So I look at it holding my first self accountable to move forward with it.
And we'll piggyback off of that. We three of us, largely working in the school system, not in the school system, in the educational system. Like what Marcus said, I first and foremost get up in the morning with my eyes like God and know that I'm taking my accountability first. Stepping out and being seen by Black youth, by Black men, by Black males, every day for me that I know that I have another young man coming in to see me that's alive, there's another day that's going to be successful. I tell them all the time, I want to be invited to more graduations, more college graduations, more marriage, more weddings, more birth notices. The number of times that I've been asked to be a godfather has amazed me. With that, I'm also looking at how do I speak to my young men. I can start and I can move from where I am, and I agree with being solution based. I can't cover every ground, and I've had to learn it the hard way. Trying to go ahead and say I can't rescue, I can't save, I can't cover everyone, but I know what I can cover, what I can do. The joy of being able to see a young man's face when he knows he's been accepted to a college, when he's been accepted to the trade that he's been applying to, when he knows that he has received this scholarship, when he knows that he's received something that's going to take him a little further. That's another conversation of excellence and excelling. Being able to go ahead and be in these spaces, being able to go around and take the young man that I have and say, okay, well, you have these number of acceptances that you receive. You have these opportunities that you have. I'm always looking at it from the standpoint of what are your options? Not limiting yourself. What are your options? Let's make sure that when you graduate, first and foremost, you graduate. Then you graduate with options. And how do we take advantage of these options? How do we follow the money so that you can be a part of that money? And so that you understand now how to put yourself into position with that money that you're following, so that now you begin to understand how to control a part of that aspect so that it works for you. I was speaking with students yesterday about credit management, the introduction to credit, what it means to have credit, how do you build credit, how do you build structural credit, how do you build credit with your family,
When you have family that doesn't speak about credit, when you have family that doesn't speak about money, when you have family that doesn't speak about education, but you have the opportunity to go look further. So I think the awareness is being aware of your community, being aware of listening to where you are. The responsibility is taking the responsibility of yourself and the responsibility of what you can drive home, but not taking the responsibility of everyone else's trauma, not taking the responsibility of everyone else's downfall, being aware of it, but I can't take the responsibility of everyone else's. But I want to make sure that we are taking the responsibility to be aware of it and work together. I know Brother Marcus and I were talking before we got started, and I think we both agreed when I mentioned earlier of us not coming together enough. We were speaking a little earlier about when we do come together, we come together majorly when there's a funeral. We come together majorly sometimes when there's a cookout, when there's a sporting event. I say all the time, when we have a football game on a Friday night, I have a sellout crowd. Every parent is there. If I have an event at school and I need the parents to show up so I can explain to you how do we work better, how do we function this, how do we get this going, how do I give you access? It's very limited. It's very telling how many parents do not show up. How many parents will then follow up later and tell me, why I didn't know, why I didn't have time. Well, I didn't want to be there. When I have events at school, if I'm going to feed you, one of the biggest things that I've been a part of that I was able to do, which has changed since we experienced COVID. We're not back there yet. The experience of being able to provide a Thanksgiving dinner to our community, which allowed us to feed upwards of 300 families, 300 people. I would do this when we also had our parent-teacher conference. That would allow for parents to show up with all children, but to make sure, one, everybody got fed. Two, all parents are now showing up to meet with the teachers, to be involved, to hear everything that's going on. That's one school, that's one aspect. Trying to see now, if we have 13 schools in Howard County, high schools right now that are working, how do we do something that's going to be systematically flowing for every high school, for everybody that's working in a direction to try to make sure we have students that are moving up? Does that make sense?
Well, yes, but I'm going to go. I don't know if I want to say okay. So I'm going to ask this next question. What role does mindset play in changing outcomes for Black men, especially systems that were not designed for our success?
It's all of it.
That's all.
So we can all agree on that.
Yeah,
No, I think that mindset, you gotta wake up ready to win. I wake up every morning trying to figure out how to destroy white supremacy, racism, all that. But more importantly, I have to I guess I have to turn inward to figure out how can I use my talents, how can I do it better than I did yesterday. And the point that Jonathan brought up about the history of hip hop and this by evidence. You talk about the statistics. Look at how the statistics rose when white folks started running hip hop, because they allowed for this degradation of Black women, allowed for the celebration of prison, glorifying prisons and gangs and killing people. And you can look at everything else. Simultaneously, the laws changed to destroy us even farther. And then the celebration of the bottom is just, I don't understand it. But my point is, when you do that, you don't allow yourself to do what we're talking about. And that's bringing unity together in the right way for something progressive. So I think that the history of our experience with, in fact, quite frankly, Black folks created American music. And if you look at the history of our influence in American music, it was always uplifting, supportive, and courageous.
Going back to your previous question about the point of awareness and accountability to follow Willie's and his flow around this hip hop transition in culture. I think that's probably a part of my frustration. That's probably part of my silence too, because we used to have what the State of Black America with Tavis Smiley. We've had conversations like this to some degree. but we never are willing to do the real hard accountability thing, right? Because the real hard accountability in that whole conversation about this hip hop thing would have been to take our black asses over to Radio 1 and tell Kathy Hughes, whom we love to death, that your music is killing the people. But none of us would have the courage to do that. We love her far too much.
Can I add to that? Because we're out here in the suburbs, right? And there's no Starbucks outside of where hospitals and college campuses are in urban communities like Baltimore, right? So if anybody's going to boycott places and stand up for folks in other communities, it's us, right? Especially since our students are coming from those communities and they don't understand a lot of, like, there's no Chick-fil-A in East Baltimore. You know what I mean? So if we are talking about real sacrifice, right, we have to get uncomfortable too. And I think that's the hard part is we look at everybody else and we don't understand that the people who we think are in the know and that are free and are the teachers and are the political candidates and the leaders in the community, like, we're still plugged into this system that we have to unlearn, right? Because, like the previous question you asked about mentality, right? The hardest thing to do is to tell a person who is in bondage that believes that they're free, that they're in bondage, right? And you see that out here a lot. You see people that try to qualify themselves by title, by education, by all these things, and none of that means anything in the big scheme of things. And if we're not willing to sit down and take all of that and push it to the side and sacrifice something and get uncomfortable. There's a little corner store right here on Hickory Ridge where the little dudes was hanging out selling weed. I'm from the hood. I was excited when I saw that store. I was like, yo, I ain't seen a corner store. That's what we call it in Detroit. I ain't seen a corner store in a minute. I went in there taking pictures of annihilators because you don't see that out here, right?
Sherry Clan.
And my man, and they out there selling weed. I walked outside. I was like, young fellas, get from out here. Get from out here. This ain't where you need to be. Stop this, right? And I'm gonna keep coming up here, although it's nothing here I want. Because I don't need annihilators. I don't need Mike and Ike's. I don't need Doritos. I'm running a 50-year-old person. I don't need any of that, right? But I'm gonna keep coming up here to make you uncomfortable because you're making other people uncomfortable. And that's the thing. If we're not willing to sacrifice anything out here in the suburbs, if we're not willing to sacrifice and unlearn what we've been taught, it's very difficult for us to reach anybody else. And I think that's the hard part. That's the part that we have to accept. And I commend my brothers that are teachers. I'm sorry.
No, keep going, man. I'm just going to ask the question to have the rest continue on what you've just shared.
Go ahead.
So the question I'm going to ask is, what strategies have you seen, all of us, seen work when it comes to engaging Black men who feel disconnected, discouraged, or overlooked?
Well, I'll say a lot of it is when we talk about. I think a lot of it is kind of natural in a sense, right? So, brother Flowers is a father, right? And that's why I believe it's important to have us in different avenues. We need people in the political arena. We need people in the medical field. We need people in finance. We need people in education. Now, culturally, his sons have more than one father. Now, he's the biological father, but I teach one of his kings. I'm his father as well, too, because extended family is a cultural component that we've always had. Not biological, but in many respects, even in schools, there were some students who called me dad. They call me right, and it's no knock against their biological if biological is involved, whatever. But what I'm saying is, I believe what helps is those cultural foundations, so that way we can get back to what it really means to be family. Getting back to what it means to be family. When we talk about our mindset, and I've said it before, and I probably sound like like I'm saying this on repeat. There's a lot of healing work we have to do. The egos, how we trust each other. We talk about these generational curses, stuff that has not been resolved, stuff that has not been addressed, stuff that we have not dealt with. There's a lot of pain in our community, and so we got to address that too. Some of us are not ready to connect with other people just yet. We got to deal with some stuff in here. The system is, we look at it like the system is out here, but it's also in here. Bob Marley said, emancipate yourself from mental what? Mental slavery. So I think that as a solution, we have to continue to move towards this spirit of collectivism. One of the things that I love about being out here, and I go
To piggyback on what you're saying, for us to be a collective community, I think the biggest thing, and to answer your question, is we need to understand something that was said earlier, and that's that everybody has their own story, right? One of the best things I've ever done in organizing was get people to tell their stories. Like, what's your why? Why are you here? Why are you talking to me? Right? And if we can get people to feel like they're heard, it makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference. I've been out in this community where somebody's kid was doing something that they were not supposed to be doing in a space that they were not supposed to be in, and they ran into me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And because I had enough of a relationship with them, and I'm not a teacher, right? I've just taken the time to listen to them, right? And sometimes, and I know Brother Flowers' kids, right? I know the twins very well, and we've had conversations like an uncle would have with a nephew, right? Like, I hear your frustrations, I know it, and I want you to stand up and be your own man. And we talk enough where you have enough confidence in me to come to me and talk to me about certain things. But I don't look at one twin and the other twin as the same person, right? I think that one of the mistakes we make is we say young people, we say black males, we generalize, and we need to, in building that community, we need to stop generalizing so much. Coach Duncan knows this best. Every student that comes his way has a different story, a different background, something that they're bringing to the table, different talents, different passions. And I think that's the biggest part, is we have to stop being so afraid of our young people.
That's one.
We have to start being so afraid of other black men, because we've adapted this suburban mentality where we walk down the street and we walk past each other and won't even look at each other.
I'm saying,
Right? I'm like, what's up? Right? And so if we can take people at face value for who they are, these young people, and understand that every story is different, and take the time to actually hear them, it makes a big difference for the opportunities and chances we get to invite them to things like this.
And just two words. Just hold y'all to 2 words to how that needs to be done. One is through vulnerability, because we have to be vulnerable with ourselves, and we got to do it with love.
Yes, sir.
If we do those 2 things, those 2 words based upon recap what's that.
The problem you have with that, though, is, and he's going to chime in on this, we don't know the definition of love.
Well,
Right? The Bible says, beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God. Everyone who loves God is born of God. Those who don't love God know not God, for God is love.
right.
Right? And if God is love, if we can't define God, we can't define love.
Well, I
So-
was going to say,
Yes, sir.
on my spiritual journey, my spiritual walk, and also being a child of God, I know
Yes, sir.
that's where my love comes from.
Exactly.
So the definition of love needs to be addressed too.
Let me say this real quick. To respond back to what you're saying, even the people who don't speak, right? And I would even argue it's not just a suburban mentality. I've been in the city, different places like that. There's a reason why people are on guard, or they may not give it up and be like, hey, like I was raised to also say hello and say hi to humanity, even if they don't say nothing back. Keep on saying hi. That was what I was raised with. But but what is and I think this gets back to the mental. We got to understand why. I think we have to understand why we do the things we do, the worldviews we have, the attitudes, the beliefs, the behaviors. And so history has a lot to do with that. And I'm just not talking about racial history. I'm talking about our personal history. I'm talking about what our relationship was like with our father, what our relationship was like with our mother, what our relationship is like with our children, I'm talking about that kind, because it's easy to talk about systemic stuff and what they're doing to us, and they are doing a disservice. But then when we talk about what's happening under our own roof, in fact, the biggest war oftentimes is in here. It's in here. So that is work, because it didn't take overnight for us to get this way. So I think that it is important to continue to talk and have these conversations. I know sometimes well, we tired of talking. And we got to do. And I think sometimes they be the main ones that might need to slow down a little bit to really understand what the story is. We ain't got time to hear the story because we're so busy on the move with it, So I think we got to continue to have these conversations and look into it.
On a positive sense, real quick, I just want to say it's also important to know we also have privilege. Not to dismiss the fact that we have Black privilege. We can acknowledge each other sometimes in spaces where we don't verbally go ahead and express it in a whole detail. We can identify each other in spaces where we don't always invite others into the space, but we acknowledge those spaces where we need to be informative and we need to be inviting everyone into the space. So just from a positive sense, we have the privilege of being Black in unification, but sometimes miss how we are going to unite others and come back into it.
So I want to address the question. The question was what strategies work. I think that we all
engage Black men who feel disconnected.
Exactly. So the disconnection part is what I want to avoid, because I think that we do things that are significant in our spaces to mitigate this type of outcome that you're talking about. And my sons, when we moved here, we were involved in Boy Scouts. And it just happened that the Wolves only had 5 people in it at Celebration Church. And my sons were 2 of the kids. We had another family that had 2 kids, and Regina Clay's son was involved as well. And we did some good things with that. And on our first trip, camping trip, I found a cedar branch that I was fascinated by, because cedar is a very spiritual piece of wood. And I didn't know what I was doing with this branch, but I had it for going on 13 years. And my timetable was doing something with it before they graduated. So when I finally did, I had to use this brother over in the corner to help me figure it out. And what we did was we created it's a monument to them. And if you look at the history of cedar and what it means, I shared that with all 5 of these guys so they can have it in perpetuity as a reminder of who they are and what their power is based on the spiritual significance of that branch. And that's a small thing, but these types of traditions, I think, are what we need to practice in order to extend this thing about brotherhood and or love to get them to focus on what their power is.
Yes.
Go
ahead.
All right, I have a question. All right, I need to get back to the Kathy Hughes thing. Get back to the Kathy Hughes thing.
Can you speak up a little
I
bit?
said I need to get back to the Kathy Hughes thing.
Oh.
All right. Now, let me ask you, Pastor. What's your favorite hip hop album of 2025? Here it is. The one we say, listen, we can't reach them. Say, it's not Kathy Hughes that's doing it. We the ones that are doing it. You can't touch them, you can't get to them, because like I heard you say, oh, well, the music is like this. Public Enemy, Fight the Power, and NW, no, not NWA, but X-Clan and all of those people, all right? Like, all of them are irrelevant.
But there are some current
Just they are.
that I do know.
Yes. And if you don't have anything to push, anything to make the kids, hear, like, don't nobody want to hear that old slavery time music that we listen to. Right? They want to hear something that's valid to them. You know what I'm saying? If you want to reach somebody, you have to go to where they are.
I don't think that's definitely not what my suggestion was. Radio One has stations in every major urban market. And during that period of time, when that transition happened, most of the music that was coming across was not something that the directors of those stations were allowed to be played in Jewish communities. That's my argument.
Yeah, no, I understand.
It's the type of music and the lyrics that we're allowing, and because of our appreciation of her, and it could be a number of different places.
I'm just picking on
I got you. But I'm just saying we want to address. We love each other so much that we'll allow those at the top of our class groups to piss all on us, no matter what it does to our communities, and we'll act like it's okay and celebrate it, and it's not.
Yeah, but it comes down to the bottom line. It comes down, like if everybody converts to Islam, you have. I mean, let's just say, this is a real hypothetical. But if everybody was converted to Islam, like everybody in the world, and if you depended solely on your pastoral profession, you have to do something for your bottom line. And that's what Kathy Hughes is doing, and that's what so many of us are doing. Something for our bottom line. And so you have to be able to come up with an alternative. And I've been in
That's
meetings.
No.
I'm
Here is why it doesn't work. 2017, my wife and I think I'm taking up her time, but this takes us directly. We're in the airport, we're getting to board a plane. The news comes on and it says Baltimore City, which is where I live, Green Mountain, North Avenue. Baltimore City is prepared to set the minimum GPA for high school athletic participation at 1.75. I said, you got to be kidding, right? So I get back within like a week, and I called the actual school and said, are you really about to? These are people who look like me, who sit on the board, maybe one or two white people on there. Are you about to pass a policy that says in order for kids to play sports, they have to have a 1.75? They said yes. So I live across the street. I walked over, literally. I used to chair the school system advisory board. He helped me a little bit. When I entered the building to sign up to register to testify at 5:30, so I'm entering at 3:30, somebody sees me, sends someone downstairs and says, Reverend Slade, what are you going to testify on? I said, I can't believe you're actually going to pass a policy that says in order for our kids to play sports, to your point, at a 1.75. They tell me flat-footed, well, if we don't do it, we won't have high school teams. But damn it, you won't have high school teams. What's more important?
I think that has to be a part of our strategy, not lower the standard.
The bottom.
But I think that the points that they were making are two different points.
Yes.
You were saying historically we should have said this is not entertainment.
Yes.
Right? And what's the first song we all learned? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And we've learned from music from day one. And we're still learning from music. And so what he was saying, I believe, is back then we should have said something to Kathy Hughes and redirected what we call Black excellence to actually being Black excellence. And what you're saying is we need to be able to connect with people because we need to understand the music of today. I think that's two separate points that are both great. That I agree strongly with both. You said,
but the connection is like, here's the connection with us adults. If you don't, I have the answer to that music. And if you don't know, your connection should be with me and how we can get related to these younger gentlemen. And then something that you have, I need to connect with you.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
so
that's
that
how
we can make steps
That's how
together
we
and move forward.
But that takes the connection to another level. And when you're able then to connect it to your community, a better grip and understanding. Okay, well, if this is what we're accepting, if this is what we're setting the bar to be here, and we are in the community where we're building acceptance for this, how can we win?
Yeah.
I don't think
you can go to any HBCU. You can go to any HBCU. You can go to any HBCU, and you'll see that the homecoming performance is going to be some of the people that we want to tell Kathy Hughes not to play. Right? These are our institutions of higher education.
I don't know what's going on. What's all this about Kathy Hughes?
But it's not.
It's not.
It's not
So-
about
No, no, no.
Walk out of here.
No, it's not about the.
I have a radio show on Captain Hughes every Tuesday, 10 o'clock in the morning. Now, why you guys gotta go like that, man? Captain Hughes is not only giving our community thousands of jobs, millions of dollars raised for education. And all you wanna talk about is a freaking talk show or
I'll take
music?
Give me one.
All right, but let me say this. Not to focus on an individual. I think when it comes to the strategies and stuff like that, we have to focus on how we go about, helping to create those changes.
One second. Brother, hold on, brother, before you leave. 1 second. No. Because he didn't understand that Kathy Hughes was an example that we was making. We weren't talking directly about Kathy Hughes. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But yes, so when it comes to we just have to make sure we don't lower the standard. But I think over time we have seen where entertainment has become maybe the focal point for Black excellence. I don't know. Like it highlighted more of when it comes to us. I don't know. I'm just asking that question. But before we're gonna get closer to the end, but I want to ask this now question: what immediate action can leaders take in the next 30 to 90 days to create tangible change, not just long-term vision?
When leaders, are you talking about locally here, or are you talking about
No,
leaders?
we are all leaders. So if we are in position, what can we do? Everyone's that's here. What can we do, or what can the leaders do? We're in positions of,
I think we can take responsibility for ourselves, right? So, if anything else, we can ask leaders to do certain things. We can ask church leaders. I know Bishop J. Drew Sheard is over the Churches of God in Christ. He was my pastor growing up. I can ask him a whole bunch of things, right? But I think we can take responsibility for us in this room, if nothing else. I think it would be great if we all came together again and we start having more strategic conversations on how we reach people individually. Like the point that you were just making, and the point Mark, thank you, made a minute ago. Mark knows the music. He speaks that language. Somebody who will listen to Mark who will never listen to me. Rev here is gonna put a biblical spin on things. There's people who will listen to him that'll never listen to someone else. And so how do we come together to make sure that we pull everybody who has an opportunity to touch somebody in one room and actually, like Marcus said before, think strategically? Because remember, the bus boycott wasn't just a boycott. They were figuring out how to get people back and forth to work, school, and all those things without using public transportation. So if we can use that as a North Star, how do we do whatever this thing is that we're trying to do without depending on public transportation, right? Or whatever the system is that we're trying to decouple ourselves from. I think there's enough experience, there's enough knowledge, there's enough connection in this space that if we can meet like this again and have a real conversation to actually make a real plan, I think that would be great when you start talking about 60 to 90 days, because it's tough to walk back. How old is this city, Brother Marcus?
Oh man.
60, 70
We
years?
celebrated
60 years?
Something like that.
It's tough to walk back 60 years of systemic racism, and when people don't even know that they ran 29 straight down the middle of the Black community, and 32.
Yeah.
Right? They don't know. We're proud to be here.
Town road.
Right? And so for us to have continuous conversations to come together and make a real plan to tell the right stories. Me and Willie talk about that all the time. Willie come to me, he be like, Jonathan, they don't know. I'm like, no, they don't know. Okay. So go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
Also, as we talk about connecting, we start with ourselves. But as we start with ourselves, we're in a space right now where we can also start with each other. So going back to where we were in the very beginning, before we established this base, what do we do in the meantime? So in the meantime, how do I step up and support Mark more? To do that more, I need to have somebody else help me, so I'm not in there by myself. How do I support Willie Flowers more? In my space, it's not just going to be me by myself. I got to bring somebody else with me. How am I going to step up? So now that we have this, when we come together the next go round, whatever that looks like, whatever it is that I have this next time, and you're invited, you show up. What do we do in the meantime? How do we show up for each other in the meantime? How do we listen to each other in the meantime?
how do we take what we heard in the meantime and then make that relevant when the next time we have a bigger space.
And that's awesome. So I'm going to go back to 30 to 60 days. So I know 30 to 60 days we're going into Black History Month. And I know we talk about personal accountability, we talk about awareness, and we talk about presence. And we all know that strength comes in numbers. So when I reach out to Dr. Cross and I already know 3 here, now I know 15. When I reach out to Dr. Cross and get that email list, and you get an email from me and saying, I need you here during this time for your presence to be known, coming with your expertise, your knowledge, your history, okay, to represent for these Afro-American kids in my school. And we're not just saying just men, we're saying men and women, because we haven't even touched on that point of the other aspect of a female, okay? We haven't even touched on that, but we as leaders can show that we have strength in numbers. Okay, so that's my first action in the first my encounter in the first 30 days, 60 days.
Well, I think my answer is a little bit more, I don't know. I think that when you work with anybody, there's a certain relationship that you establish with the person. You get to know the person. You get to know their interests, you get to know their family, you get to know their story. You share your story. You develop that, and that doesn't happen overnight. And I'm not saying by all means there's not things that we need to do a little bit like sooner than later, but there has to definitely be intentionality to create and forge those relationships. There has to be. And when we're amongst each other more, even just naturally and casually. Like for example, I know not too long ago you invited me to go hoop with y'all. You might even forgot you did, right? And that's just so you know, that's been on my mind because I used to hoop before I got into this. I used to play ball, but it's up to me, since you extended the invite, to shuffle some things around and make it a priority to link up with you and hoop. And between 5-on-5, sitting on the bench sipping water, we may talk about some stuff and might not and have no idea just how much we might have in common, and we can build off of that. Right? Brother Flowers, word on the street is that you run. Or you did, or you still do, whatever the case may be. Well, I like to run as well too. We can hit these Columbia streets and jog together, right? So what I'm saying is, it could be even on a basic, regular level, right? And it's funny, but I would say that the other thing too is sacrifice. I remember, doing different things, rites of passage programs, for young men, introducing them to the culture, showing them how to build family. What is fatherhood like? What does it mean to look for a mate? History, all that types of stuff. Children's educational, grassroots, independent, all that type of stuff. But when it comes to being uncomfortable, part of that discomfort is giving up some of them comfort creatures. It ain't just maybe food to eat, watching the game, right? The football game or whatever the case may be. So it might be different things. But we also have to, I believe, give up certain things that we do to make room and make more space. Now, I know a lot of us are already doing a lot, right? But how can we do more, and how can we avail ourselves more? I think a lot of times we're just too busy.
But I also think that you make time to do what you want to do. And I think that it would be great if we had a place where we can put our events, right? Or something that we are a part of. Because right now we're all dependent on social media and word of mouth, right? But there's no place. We have Living While Black in Howard County, which is pretty good. That really takes the lead on. But I think to have a space where we can say, all right, this is what a brothers is going to be. And even in situations where like they honking horns on the side of the road, we don't go out there, but this is what we going to be, right? And so I just think that it would be great if we had a space where we can come together virtually and see what's going on, so we can be supportive to one another.
We're gonna make that happen for 2026.
Yeah. I'll be a part of hosting an event to so that we can get in alignment. Because I do think there's a way to nourish ourselves. This whole thing about love is important. Because I think that we need to be reminded that the most important person we can love first is who?
Yourself.
And so some people don't know that. So I will be, I'll take the lead on that so we can come together and chart out which way we go. I'm there for that.
And put a larger door
We
with
already
you. Put a
there.
larger door with you.
We have already began to chime in, but we don't want to make commitments, but we do want to be intentional about what opportunities are. We mentioned rites of passage, and that's missing here. And this whole thing about these middle school dropout zone is real out here as well. So kind of already talked about this, but I will stage an opportunity for us to come together where we are so that we know what the strengths are. We haven't itemized that.
I got a question for the parents, everybody, or everybody in here. How many hours a month are you willing to commit? How many hours a month are you willing to commit? Or we just gonna get up here and talk? How many hours a month can we commit together to whatever topic, whatever situation, come and we talk? How many hours a
Get it
month?
together.
And we're talking about the youth. How many hours a month are you really gonna commit?
We started out
Why
with
you
3
will?
today.
We got 3 so far.
You have to, so you're talking to an old church.
And the reason why I bring this up,
So, too much
and the reason why I bring this up, so my background, Mason Boston Law, I'm 145. I've been working with Willie, NAACP. I'm also a member of the 100 Black Men of the Greater Washington, D.C. chapter. And we have commitment issues. We can get up here and say all these nice fancy words, but then when it's time to show up, 20% of people don't do it.
Same.
Well,
The same 20.
well, the thing is, never will everybody come. That's unrealistic. There will never be that's not going to happen. And I would say even what history has taught us, sometimes you look at the Black Panther movement and different. You start off small,
Right.
and I agree. Commitment is a huge issue in our community. Whether we overcommit, whether we don't set boundaries, and or whatever the case may be. But I would also say, when we talk about what we're willing to commit, I don't want to shortchange or undermine a lot of work that individuals are already doing in here too.
Right.
People that ain't even on the panel that's doing a lot of stuff. So that's something to take into account as well too. But that is a very valid question. What can you commit, or what can you sacrifice, or what can you let go of? I know me personally, this is life work for me. Almost every second of the day, in some way, either directly or indirectly, some way, shape, or form, I'm studying, I'm teaching, I'm husbanding, fathering, but I got to even figure out myself, what can I do, because it's bigger than Marcus Sankoff. It's about the collective. So what is it that we can do? But that's a valid question. But yeah, I think that I just wanted to make sure we didn't shortchange what is already being done. And I think even that could be a deficit narrative that we take on, and so there's not work already being done, right? That is important to even raise up. In fact, I don't know, before we finish, there may be some events or some happenings going on even right now we don't even know about. So maybe there's some space to even put that out there.
Yeah, I just think step one is for us to come together. We can organize that any kind of way possible. Everybody bring 2 other people, whatever, and build from there. So that's what I offer as a first step.
Yeah, I think that's a good step forward. We bring people that we know, so and support other events that we see other brothers and sisters are doing, so we can be in those spaces. Because if I didn't attend Kenny event, I wouldn't meet you all, to be honest. because from him I get to meet everyone except because I went to the school and coming to Mr. Ringo. But that's what we're going to do as we go forward. So if you have any last thing that you all want to say, you can say that or we can close the conversation. But I'm going to stay in contact with everyone here, and I also want you. Are you in school? College?
Oh, you give him a suit.
I can give him a suit. Yeah, so for 2 students that attend, thank you. So I'll make sure I get you size and stuff like that. So you he gotta be present the next time. So we're gonna make sure we incentivize them. Where? I have this company that bought it. So we talk about it.
That's why we can't come together. Say no.
You like you was crazy.
No. The company's in Georgia, so I do have them in Chicago.
Okay.
So yeah. So if you have one thing that you want to say before you leave, we're just going to close out. I'm just going to read some things that I have here.
Let's go.
Yeah. Oh.
Let's go.
Whatever it is.
All right. So as we close this conversation today, we discussed about things that we are doing and things that we need to see change amongst us. And we're going to start with us, despite what's happening. From a systemic standpoint, we're going to address things that are happening in front of us, and we're going to choose to be better leaders, make decisions intentionally, and show up with responsibility, alignment, and courage. Because courage is going to be really important, because things that are happening, if we are timid, we're not going to address or change any of those things that may affect us. Let this panel be the turning point, a reminder that our present matters, our voices matter, and our actions matter. I'm here to support everyone with what they're doing, their groups, the impact they want to have, because that's how I started my journey. I want to see us as Black men do more, also achieve more, and be willing to be in spaces where I can stand with your excellence without feeling any type of words. All right. So as we go forward, every one of us here have something, that can make a difference. And I'm supposed to be able to sit with your difference, no matter how bright that light is, and still sit there, no matter what light I have. Your light shouldn't affect me. And the same thing as we go forward. I want your light to be shining as bright as possible, and it may be brighter than mine, but that shouldn't stop me from supporting you, because your light is brighter than mine. So with that being said, I just want to say thank you, man. I really appreciate it, because you guys just met me, and you're taking the time, to come sit here with a vision I have with this idea. Although I've been doing it for a little bit, but you take the time to come and share with me, with the audience, and with everyone here. So I really appreciate it, and for the guests, I really appreciate you all taking the time to be here with us today. So I want to say thank you. I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Look,
Good job, my friend.
Well, don't drop it. Wait.
Can we get a quick picture?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
okay.
You got a good camera.
He not gonna play us out.
We got a.
Oh,
No.
I got a.
get a quick picture here.
You got a
Oh, you got to leave?
Yeah, I got
You
a
gonna play us out first?
Black male fundraiser that I got to go to. All hearts and minds are clear.
Okay.
The Lord keep you, may the Lord go with you, may the Lord guide you. Bless you. Somebody also it's time for
You want to get over here?
call little night chat. Let's see from that generation.
You want to get over here? And so,
No, jump on in. That's why we scoot in. That's all.
Any instructions?
Come
How to orchestrate this thing?
can you see everyone?
You might need to go in a little bit more. Yeah.
You got my cap up here in there?
Which one we looking at?
Where we looking?
Smiling.
Listen, can you
brothers in here.
Mr. Phil?
Okay. You guys ready? You guys look great.
Airdrop.
I mean, airdrop.
Did you take one with that phone already?
Yeah, yes. There you go. You take one right here. I know you got it. I know you got the experience behind the phone.
Okay. We got one more. No, one more picture.
Like two.
All right. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Okay, nice. Let me do this one now. All right. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. All right.
Okay, hold on.
One more.
Got one more.
Oh, let me just step off.
You guys ready?
That's me. Appreciate you, bro. I saw it in there.
Oh yeah, we still have more fuel. We have more pizza and stuff like that here.
I just wanted to make sure that you got your stuff in. Yeah, give me time.
Look at you. So yeah, I see you doing this, man.
Oh, you don't? I don't. Must be your.
That's right. You gotta get
Yeah,
take this picture real quick.
You don't want to take it?
Well, I'll have to
Oh yeah. So that's the thing.
Good? Alright, give me a sec.
But that was sort of what I was making. I think that's a part of it.
Alright, Willie. Oh, we'll be together. This one.
We know me?
I don't know. The what?
It's also
Yeah, you might say the nigga.
What you doing? I'm gonna follow you then. They got health food. What's the address?
sent it. I sent it.
I said, okay,
I appreciate it. Yeah, no problem.
thank you so much.
All right, man. Let's hit it.
I'll give you that.
202.
Really? Oh, no, no, okay. Oh.
On its way to you. Yeah, sure.
Good.
I swear. I'm talking about between us.
Hold that thought real quick. Hold that thought. I was just saying, before we started our conversation, I said I gave him a piece of paper and I gave him a pencil. I said, you can stop down, whatever.
Right.
Go ahead, you have thoughts, you get in the conversation. And whenever school starts back up, for him and all of the other heads, and I don't know, I might, this is our first year on board, that's what he's with, where I might do all of them, you know. And so that's why I wanted to kind of know what your thoughts were and different things. He didn't have a chance to ask me what y'all thought, but tell me what you thought about the dialogue. It was a while. We was going at it.
Yeah.
What you think?
I think it was good with describing bringing hip hop and culture into the businesses as well. Because I think that's really important and for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So I just wanted to maybe to the conversation. These individuals who are up here, businessmen, people here focusing on business, having contact information, you can get it. But yeah, I'm glad you come, man, because I didn't know you would be available and all the rest of it. But you came early. So anyways, appreciate you. I appreciate you.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah.
And if you need, let me know.
Okay, we'll do.
I will let Dave know. Okay.
Absolutely.
See Monday.
All right. Well,
I mean, January 6th.
January 26th.
Yeah.
But if you need anything between now and then, let me know. Tomorrow, you know, the MLK thing.
Oh, yeah. It's not happening.
Yeah, because I never heard of it. So don't even worry about it. I was trying to get information, so it's looking like we'll have to sit this one out. Okay? All right. Okay, sounds good. Okay, all right, Gabe. All right, my man. Take care. All right.
All right. You good?
Yep.
All right. How you feeling, man?
Good, man. What's up?
I don't want to be so frank, but you can get your own requirement.
My mother, I always know she was when something put on the man like taking help emotions. Tell me what you want first.
Oh, no. I'm just saying, like, don't say something, you know,
So what about so what I do that is, as I go, I may also.
Now, I don't know what's your perspective. Was I abstract or was it something straight for you?
Sure. Educators, community activists. So I can do like,
I'm all like,
No. I appreciate stuff like knowledge. Like, I don't know. And I definitely need that. So I want to make sure, you know, what I had to contribute to the studies. So I appreciate that. That's why I'm asking you.